guys, it's your boy Crimson Jockey. That is the dumbest intro I have ever come up with, but I like it, and it's what stuck. So, I'm not going to say it's been a minute. You know it's been a minute. Anyways, all that jazz aside, it is the beginning of my very last semester in college. I plan on turning right back around and starting my master's program whenever I'm done, but I wanted to get a couple of videos out of the way before I got bombarded with schoolwork and other stuff and all that jazz. So, for this video in particular, I wanted to talk about, drumroll, Sonic Frontiers. So, over Christmas break, I got a hold of Sonic Frontiers and got to play it and finish it. It was a lot of fun, so this is just going to be very brief. Like, this isn't going to be super in-depth or anything like that, but there's a couple things that I do want to talk about specifically. So the first being the gameplay. This is easily, I think, one of my favorite open-world games that I've played thus far. I mean, like, open world kind of seems to be like the status quo of what makes an action role-playing game good nowadays. Because you had Breath of the Wild, you have some Assassin's Creed games, you have Elder Scrolls. I mean, like, there's just so much now, and it's not. I don't think it's quite to the point of like oversaturation, but it is definitely noticeable. And I don't think that like every action RPG needs to be open world. But Sonic Frontiers is, or at least it's the closest that Sonic probably could ever be to open world. The game is split up into four islands, I think. I forgot. A couple islands. I think it's 4 or 5 islands. And each one is incredibly large. It takes a good amount of time to circle the whole thing, if you even dare to do that. Like Breath of the Wild, there are like towers or puzzles and stuff that you can do to complete a map, and then the map will kind of show you just exactly how big the island is or anything else. So, but super expansive. It's very large. There's a lot to do. Speaking of like the levels, or I guess levels, is what I mean by like the open world islands or whatever. But speaking of the islands, I will say that it is like a little weird to just have like a bunch of random rails just like floating in midair. Like, obviously it's a necessity because Sonic is a very high-speed action RPG. They're trying to do something with like this open world island thing, so Sonic needs to do stuff. So it makes sense that there's like a bunch of like random tricks and pyramids and whatever else. And I know that there's like a canon or lore reason as to why a lot of that's there. It's like left over from the ancient civilizations of the Coco or whatever, or it's because of Sage messing with cyberspace or whatever. I know that a lot of that's there for like a reason, like the giant pyramid in the first island. That's just like flying in the sky. I know why that's there. But like the very like small miscellaneous rails and stuff is like what I'm talking about, and the springs and whatever. So it is a little weird, like as you're playing through, especially because every island is kind of themed a little differently. Like you have the very open greenery one for the first island. The second one is kind of the same. Or no, the second one is, I think, it's the Tails one, which is kind of just like, it's almost like a sky fortress. Like, it's a bunch of smaller islands around a decently sized one. That one was okay. I mean, like, that one having rails interconnecting them all made a lot more sense, or like bridges, because that was another thing too, is you would use rails to get to the other smaller islands around this bigger one, and then you would complete puzzles that would open up a bridge. So like that makes a lot more sense. The desert area with Knuckles is really cool, but it is just like a little weird, because like you're playing the Sonic game, and the game's trying to convince you and compel you that these are kind of islands of past civilizations, and I mean, like, you get to see the Cocos, and so you get to see what they look like now and what they used to look like, but then you look around and you see all these like random like trick rails and stuff. So unless like these Cocos were just like skating about and having the time of their life, it is a little weird to sit there and to be like, this is supposed to be a desert, and there's a bunch of like parkour extreme rails and stuff here. It's not like a bad nitpick or anything, it's just like, it breaks the immersion. just a tiny bit, just a tiny bit. At least for me, it did. The individual, like, actual levels, like what most Sonic fans are familiar with, like 1, 2, or no, it's like Mario, actually. It's formatted like Mario, like World 1, Level 2, or World 1, Level 3. It's formatted the same way. So it's Island 1, Island 2, Island 3. And then it's, I forget what, cyberspace is the second category or whatever. But you access them... you defeat some bosses and around the islands, and you get these gear shifts. You use the gear shifts to unlock these throne-looking things, and the throne-looking things give you access to like actual traditional Sonic levels. And then you complete those Sonic levels to get keys, and you use the keys to unlock the Chaos Emeralds. So I will admit that, like, the amount of currency going on there of, like, you have to do this to have to do that, and then once you do that, you do this, is a little like, oh my gosh, like, could this not have been a little simpler? Like, I like it, on one hand. I like the idea of having the open world areas where you fight these cyberspace bosses, but then you go into cyberspace, which is like more traditional Sonic levels, and you can fight some Eggman bots there and whatever. I like both of them. I just don't know if the currency shared between the two of them, or like the transaction that's going on from gear shift to key to Chaos Emerald, is really necessary. But it is cool. Yeah, I mean, like, it is cool, especially because it ties into the fact that, oh, these are Coco ancient technology things, and Sage has been messing with them, and Eggman is stuck in there. So, like, it all makes sense. It's all very coherent on a lore level or whatever. But just the idea that I have to sit there and I have to be like, okay, I have so many gear shifts, so I need so many keys, but I don't have this amount of keys, so I need to go collect more gear shifts. I mean, like, the game will tell you how many keys you have, how many gear shifts you have, but admittedly, it did take me a little bit to actually, like, figure out and work the menu, the UI, between the pause, between the map. I mean, like, honestly, I still probably couldn't tell you which button it is to map. I know the pause button, and I know how to save my game and to enhance my skill tree, but like the whole map thing was a little weird. And I felt like there were at times too where, like, I tried going into the map and going into like another layer of the map, but I ended up going into another menu, or like vice versa. I tried going into the menu, but I ended up in the map. That was a little clunky, the UI of like going between the map or the settings or whatever else, right? Maybe it's just me, maybe I'm an idiot. I mean, I probably am. So story. The story was pretty good. As far as like Sonic's just kind of chilling out with Tails, and then they get hit, and then they're stranded on islands, and lo and behold, Amy and Knuckles are also trapped here for whatever reason. So that was like a little like moment of disbelief where I'm just kind of like, why exactly were these people here? But that was one thing. I really like the fact that Tails, Amy, and Knuckles kind of have their own like mini arcs, more specifically Tails. Ever since like Sonic Colors or Unleashed or whatever, Tails has kind of been seen as like the wimp, and like the anime Sonic X definitely didn't help that. So like Tails has kind of like been seen as like a wimp character, but I mean, for the longest time, like since Tails' conception to about like the Colors era, apparently is what it's called, he was a pretty competent character, but then from then onwards, he was just kind of like a baby, or like a wimp, kind of like more like Luigi a little bit. So they fixed that here, and they kind of give him an actual substantial arc, and he's like, I'm not going to be, you know, a crybaby anymore or whatever. I'm actually going to stand up for myself. And it's like, okay, that's great, you know. I'm not exactly sure what kind of like Amy goes through. Knuckles sort of goes through this like thing of like being hard-headed. Him and Sonic have a couple heart-to-hearts, which is really nice. You kind of get that feeling that they're still, like, obviously they're friends. First and foremost, they're friends, but they're still kind of rivals, you know? And I do like that was kind of brought to life a little bit more, rather than just kind of being like buddies and Knuckles being dumb. Yeah, there was actually like a competent rivalry between the two of them, or like snarky comments back and forth. So that was cool. The story with Sage and Eggman I really liked. I loved the ending of like when everything is said and done and the bad guy is defeated. Eggman you just look at his body language. I mean, like, well, obviously he doesn't talk, so all you have is his body language. But you can see that he's like actually upset that he doesn't have Sage anymore. Like he genuinely cared for Sage. I really liked that. That was, I mean, like, I know Eggman isn't like a downright evil character. He's probably closer to Dr. Doofenshmirtz than a lot of people think that he is. So that was really sweet. I really liked that. That kind of humanized him a lot more for me. Sonic was pretty cool too. I remember one of the trailers was like his arm was like getting infected or whatever, so like I was really waiting for that to happen, and we're like 3 islands in, and he's not really feeling that a whole lot. He's on the island with Tails. Okay, so yeah, it went Amy, then it went Knuckles, and then it went Tails, I think. But he's on the last island with Tails, and suddenly Sonic is like getting really ill from the whole like cyberspace jumping thing. Whereas, like, in the first island, you see him absorb the cyber energy, and you're like, oh, I wonder what that is. But he doesn't even, like, act like he's hiding anything. He's just like, yeah, no, I'm chill. And then in the Knuckles place, like, it sort of is a little more, like, actually potent. Like, you're like, okay, this might start to gradually affect him. But, like, on a scale of, like, 1 to 10, on 10 being, like, he's gonna die, you're maybe at like a 1, maybe a 2.5, right? By the time you're on Knuckles Island. When you're on the 3rd island with Tails, it jumps to like an 8, and it's like super severe. And you're like, and Sonic's like, oh my god, you know, I'm like limping when I'm walking and everything. And all the cutscenes and stuff is Sonic, like his eyes, instead of like being all the way open, are like halfway open because he's so tired and worn out. And you're like, I can kind of get it if I'm factoring in all the gameplay I've done, then I get it. But if it's just cutscenes, which is what I've been led up to believe from the past 2 islands, then I'm not really sure why Sonic is like feeling or looking this like, you know, drained. Again, this is more nitpicky. This isn't like an actual problem. This is just more nitpicky. I mean, it's a Sonic game. It's a kid's game. It's not supposed to be like super in depth or anything. But these are just like little things that I kind of noted. But there was that. The boss fights were really cool. The last one, though, was a little, I think, easier. I mean, like, I felt like that the first boss fight was a little harder, but I think that was because you didn't start with Super Sonic, right? Like, you started regular Sonic, and then you had to climb Giganto, was that his name? And then get the last emerald. The second one was the dragon, or the wyvern, technically. And I think you just start Super Sonic, which is fine. I mean, like, it's kind of hard to compete with an actual wyvern. Or no, maybe I'm wrong. I don't remember being regular Sonic for the wyvern fight. For the next one, I think it was Knight, or Supreme. I think it's Knight and then Supreme, or whatever. But the sword one, that was easily the coolest one. But it's Super Sonic the whole time. I really liked that fight too, because it had a lot of those like time things, where like, you know, you have to press a button so much within like a time limit, or like you automatically die. I really liked that, because it really felt like Sonic wasn't just like blasting, like he was actually fighting with strategy. Which you don't really, I think, get in a whole lot of Sonic games, right? Like, it's just, he's fast, and he punches things. And sometimes he does his little spin dash and cuts through them, right? So, but no, like, the Supreme, or the Knight one, whatever the one that was, in the desert area. Or was it the desert? No, Wyvern was desert. In the area with Tails, with the Knight, that was really cool. The very last one, wasn't really all that exciting for me. It was, I think, the easiest one. That was Supreme. It was Giganto, it was Wyvern, and then it was, I think, Knight or Soldier or something. And then it was Supreme. Supreme was, I think, the easiest, and I don't know if it's just because I had gotten better at the game by that point, or if it's because, like, I was, like, over-preparing, and I was like, okay, this is going to be really, really hard, and so I did my best to, like, avoid a bunch of attacks or whatever, but the last fight seemed pretty easy. And then, like, when it jumps up into space and whatever, it's not even one of those MASH ones, because the MASH ones I think are relatively difficult. But the ones where you have to like hit it within a time within that ring is really easy. And you only had to do that twice, and then the boss's second phase was over, and the game was over. So I thought that the ending fight was, like, a little lame. I would have preferred, like, a much more difficult boss fight. But that's just me. But there isn't really a whole lot else to the story other than that. Like, I felt like that it wasn't undercooked. I wouldn't go to say that far. I would just say that with how open the game was, with its plot, with its areas, with how open everything about the game was, several areas felt a little empty. But it's still a lot of fun. Like, what you have is fantastic. I mean, like, I would easily give the game probably a solid, like, 7 3/4, maybe an 8, just from gameplay alone, because it was so fun. The soundtrack's really good, too. Like, the kind of, like, Breath of the Wild type music that you'll get. I mean, like, this is me, like, comparing every open world experience to Breath of the Wild, because I'm a moron. But the music was really good, especially during the boss fights. That one, or the opening song, or the ending song, or whatever, is that one, like, rock one. That's really good. The ending song was good, though, too. But yeah, I know that there's DLC supposedly coming out for the game, and you get maybe I'm wrong, but I think I heard that you get to play as Amy, Tails, and Knuckles. So that would be really cool if that does end up happening. I mean, that's not something that I necessarily think the game needed, but I completely welcome it with open arms and with an open wallet. So I think that'll be cool whenever that comes out. I don't know when that is, though. But I'm not necessarily in, like, a rush or anything. But overall, I really enjoyed Sonic Frontiers. I would recommend it if you, like, happen to pass, like, a game store, and if it's on sale or if it's pre-owned. I don't know if I would have bought it on release, but I definitely, I'm glad I got it for Christmas and whatever. So yeah, if you've got, like, another, like, 30 or 40 bucks that you want to put down to Sonic Frontiers, I would highly recommend it. It was a lot of fun. I look forward to the DLC whenever I get around to doing that. I mean, there's a couple other, like, DLC things that I still have always said that I need to get. Like, I still need the Pokemon Sword and Shield DLC, or whatever else, and I've never done that. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to whatever comes next of Sonic Frontiers. I really hope that Sega and the Sonic team continue to make really quality Sonic action games like this, or even if they want to branch out and do something strange again, you know, like the Shadow the Hedgehog thing, if they want to do something like that, or like Sonic Adventure where you get to play, or Sonic Heroes where you get to play as, like, multiple different teams. Just, like, innovative stuff like that is what I'm here for. Whether it's Sonic, whether it's Mario, whether it's Zelda, whether it's Square Enix, like, if it's innovative and it's new and it's just creative and it works really well, I am all for it. And Frontiers definitely accomplishes that, and I'm very excited to see what they do next. But yeah, anyways, guys, this was relatively short and sweet. I mean, I say short and sweet. This is probably like 12 minutes long already, but I have no idea. I'm not looking at a clock. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching. This is Jake, logging out. Peace.